know when to strike and how to disappear. Murders stack up, all unsolved. But when a pregnant woman is assassinated, agents vow to stop the violence. A twisting battle ensues, and the line between cop and criminal blurs. Unless agents can solve the case, no one is safe.
In the 70s and 80s, a gang of thugs wreaked havoc on the island of Puerto Rico. Organized, experienced, and deadly, they seemed beyond the reach of the law. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As a U.S. Commonwealth, Puerto Rico falls under the jurisdiction of the FBI. Agents discovered the gang was run by corrupt cops, men sworn to protect, now out to kill. The fraternity of law enforcement was splintered and at war.
July 28th, 1977, San Juan, Puerto Rico. New York diamond dealer Stephen Brooks visits the island on his annual business trip. He plans to meet a local jeweler to collect money from an earlier deal. He also wants to sell from the new inventory he's carrying $250,000 worth of quality stones. He's alone, with no bodyguard. Brooks is scheduled to return home in 2 days. On July 29th, Puerto Rico police respond to the discovery of a body outside the city. It's an adult male shot with a .38 caliber gun, then burned severely. There's no driver's license, and because of the fire, a visual ID is impossible. Police find no other clues and bury the murder victim as a John Doe. 4 months later, media coverage prompted by Brooks's family helps police realize it was the diamond dealer's body they found. The murder is part of an alarming trend. In the last few years, at least 2 other U.S. diamond merchants have been killed in Puerto Rico. Special Agent Fernando Candelario.
We had transportation of jewelry by individuals coming in from New York specifically. Ended up in Puerto Rico. These individuals were kidnapped. Their bodies were found later on.
Since the slayings have an interstate aspect, the FBI works with local police, but no solid evidence points to any suspects.
The agents would communicate with their counterparts at the police of Puerto Rico to see if the police of Puerto Rico had developed any leads.
But with no leads reported, the cases grow cold. At the time, violent crime is common in San Juan, where poverty mixes with a surging cocaine trade and drug gangs rule the streets. Authorities have trouble sending the powerful gangsters to prison. In March 1979, one major gang leader under investigation for murder silences the only witness to that murder with a gunshot to the head. The gang leader's girlfriend, Jessica Trujillo, witnesses the killing and later agrees to help put the gangster away. Special Agent Jim Bird of the San Juan FBI.
She was going to testify in a homicide case against a pretty well-known organized crime character there in San Juan. This girl, because they were aware of the danger, the threats against her, was kept in police custody.
Jessica spends her days at the police station, and at night, homicide detectives drive her to her grandmother's house to sleep. The trial begins in May 1980, and prosecutors look forward to finally getting a guilty verdict against a major drug lord. But then, on the trial's 5th day, a body is discovered in a sugarcane field near San Juan. It's Jessica Trujillo, the only witness against the gang leader. An autopsy later reveals she was shot twice at point-blank range, execution style. And she was 3 months pregnant. The only evidence recovered, a Panama hat found near the body. The terrible murder shocks island residents, including San Juan FBI Special Agent D. Rosario.
Jessica was very well known in the news media. It was well known that she was going to testify against this other individual whom she witnessed murder another man. And it was well known that Jessica was being protected by the police. The allegations were, at least the rumors initially were, that since she had been in police protective custody, apparently she was murdered by police officers.
Suddenly, the unthinkable seems possible. The Puerto Rico Bureau of Special Investigation, known as NIE, works potential police corruption cases. They ask the FBI for help.
It was a matter of trust. Whom do you trust? And the NIE thought it better to trust the FBI than to go to the police department itself and try to find someone there that they could really trust to conduct this investigation.
FBI and NIE agents interview the detectives in the homicide division and are stunned when no one claims to remember who had custody of Jessica the day she was killed.
No cooperation was obtained at all. None of the investigators were going to talk at all about this thing.
It's an ominous turn. Agents get nothing but interference from police officers sworn to protect and serve. The strict code of silence frustrates FBI Special Agent Angelo Class.
It was obvious from the outset that the police officers were somehow involved. Either they had given Jessica up to somebody or they had killed her themselves.
Yet the truth remains elusive. Finally, agents track down the officers said to be responsible for escorting Jessica the night before her body was found. Detective Victor Sousay claims that he and his partner, Detective Gil Valera, drove Jessica home as scheduled. Their alibi is that they left her in front of her grandmother's house. Victor says he has no idea what happened after they dropped her off. Perhaps someone abducted her. Agents try to corroborate Victor's story.
We interviewed many people. We went out to her grandmother's house and conducted a neighborhood investigation there.
No one reports seeing Jessica at all that day. And then, the one clue that had been recovered disappears. The Panama hat found near Jessica's body mysteriously vanishes from the police evidence locker. Media reports claim the homicide chief often wears a Panama hat like the one in question. And agents determined the car used to drive Jessica home that night belongs to the Puerto Rican homicide chief himself, Emeterio Benitez. Agents secure the car, and FBI technicians examine it for evidence. Its interior surfaces have been recently cleaned, according to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
You could smell the bleach on the car. We figured out that, it was clean because something might have happened in this car, something like a murder or something that was trying to be covered.
FBI technicians dismantled the car. Beneath the front seat, they discovered dried blood, a lot of it. More blood appears beneath the dashboard and behind the passenger door panel.
The way the blood was distributed in the car, we believe that a person had been killed in that car.
Technicians also find ballistic evidence, marks that appear to be from a bullet discharged inside the car. At the FBI crime lab, examiners compare the dried blood to samples taken from Jessica at autopsy. But there's a problem making a match.
Back then, we didn't have DNA. So the only thing we could say was it was the same type of blood as Jessica's, but we couldn't say that that blood came from Jessica.
When agents question Emeterio, the homicide chief calmly explains he bleached the car's interior after transporting a dead animal in the back seat. He says the bullet marks came from an accidental weapon discharge months earlier. He has no idea how the blood got there, and explains dozens of people have access to his car due to a tight departmental budget.
His car was used by almost everybody in the homicide division. Whenever they were short of cars, they would use his car. He would lend it out, so that we couldn't know for sure who might have been in the car. We didn't have enough physical evidence. Circumstantial, yes, but not physical. And when we charge somebody, we really want to go with a case that we're extremely confident in, that we're going to be successful in its prosecution. So we didn't want to take a chance and not be successful by prematurely charging anybody with a crime.
Suddenly, instead of one suspect, agents have dozens, and still nothing solid to act on. Somehow, the agents of the FBI and NIE have to break through a wall of silence to get to the truth. In 1980, FBI and Puerto Rico NIE agents suspect corrupt cops were somehow involved in the death of Jessica Trujillo, a government witness murdered while under police protection. Evidence suggests the shocking possibility that Jessica was killed in the car of homicide chief Emeterio Benitez. But it's not enough for an arrest, especially with such a high-level suspect, according to FBI Special Agent Jim Byrd.
I mean, there was some circumstantial evidence, but again, this is not a guy with a criminal background. This is the head homicide investigator for the whole San Ramon metropolitan area. You can't just say, we think you did it, you're coming with us. The case wasn't going to be solved for some time.
Because they're investigating cops, and they're not certain who they can trust, Special Agent Angelo Class and the rest of the team cannot allow any leaks.
When we started, we were given our own room, and nobody was allowed back there unless you were working on the case.
The agents desperately need someone on the inside. They check into the detectives who allegedly drove Jessica home, Gil Valera and Victor Suse.
We kind of profiled them a little bit. We asked other agents about them. We found out more about these two individuals. And we felt like of the two, the more serious individual, the better cop, if you will, of the two was Victor. And so we decided we were going to appeal to that goodness inside of Victor.
At the time, Victor is finishing up his regular National Guard training in the U.S. Agents are ready when he comes back.
So we intercepted him at the airport, and we told him we wanted to talk to him, and we took him voluntarily to an apartment that we had rented as a safe house.
The agents need to get Victor to turn informant. It won't be easy.
He started denying having any involvement in anything. We had the wrong guy.
NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte appeals to Victor's sense of honor.
I told him, well, listen, if you didn't kill Jessica, I want you to help me out, find out who were the murderers. And you're a homicide detective? I'm not a homicide detective. And you're one of the best homicide detectives. And in fact, he was. So I need your help.
They let him know now is his only chance to save himself.
The idea was, if you don't cooperate with us, we will conduct the investigation. We probably will charge you and convict you, and you will lose your family. You'll certainly lose that rank that you're wearing. You will go to a federal penitentiary. And the only way you can avoid this is by coming clean and telling us and cooperating with us.
They assure the detective they will protect him. After several hours, Victor finally agrees to cooperate. He admits lying earlier. He had not driven Jessica home that night as he first reported.
He was told to say that by the chief, that he and the other agent did not take her home. He doesn't know who took her home.
Victor claims many detectives are involved in a host of criminal activities. They call themselves El Muerta Escuadra, the Death Squad.
He started naming people and crimes, and we were taking notes, and I mean, for days.
Through a series of interviews, the full scope of the corruption becomes apparent.
Within the first 10 to 15 debriefing sessions with Victor, we had probably identified about 65 individuals, mostly police officers, that were involved in crime. But they also there were some lawyers and some business people. We decided we would then group to find out who was involved in criminal activity with who, and what kinds of crimes they were involved in. And then when we had all these groups, it appeared as if though we were dealing with 19 different groups.
Special Agent D. Rosario helps identify the corruption's epicenter.
The majority of the officers that were involved in corrupt activities came from a specific division within the police department known as the Criminal Investigation Corps, the CIC.
The CIC is made up of the highest-ranking detectives on the force and the most powerful.
Basically, they were their own fiefdom. They were out there doing their own thing. And basically, they did not have to answer to anyone for their actions.
The CIC runs all drug busts in San Juan.
They became very powerful, and so they began to develop a lot of sources of information and informants out on the street.
According to Victor, those sources became collaborators in a series of armed robberies, kidnappings, even murder for hire. Drug dealers are easy targets for the death squad. No dealer will press charges for stolen drugs, especially if they don't survive the robbery.
Every meeting that we had with Victor just expanded more and more our investigation, because Victor was able to provide not just names of people that he personally knew within the department that were involved in committing crimes, but he knew of specific crimes that had been committed.
Victor tells agents what he knows about the murder of diamond dealer Stephen Brooks. He says the rogue officers of CIC were tipped off about the broker's arrival by the jeweler Brooks was to meet. They pulled the man over, knowing he was carrying lots of diamonds.
A police officer can stop you anywhere, can stop you on the street, ask you for your title of the car and everything, and that's what they practically did. I mean, they had the power to stop people.
The trained officers made sure there were no witnesses. Because the CIC investigated the homicide when it was later discovered, it was all too easy to cover up their crime.
So you have Group 10, so
Victor's revelations disturbed the honest agents working the case.
These weren't men that were total strangers. I knew them. It was appalling. It was just appalling that these men had gone that far. Here were men who had raised their right hand and swore to uphold the law and serve and protect. And yet, if it had not been for their badges, they were totally indistinguishable from any other common criminal.
No matter how long it takes, the FBI and the NIE are determined to stop the death squad. In Puerto Rico, The FBI and NIE investigate a broad ring of crooked cops who call themselves the Death Squad. Special Agent Angelo Class leads the complex investigation.
The overall objective was to identify as many people involved in public corruption in Puerto Rico as we could, and then to identify crimes that they had committed and come up with the evidence to be able to prosecute them.
Detective Victor Suse has cooperated, but agents need more for prosecution.
One of the first things we had to do was try to corroborate whether Victor was being honest with us or not, trying to corroborate whether we were getting the truth and whether we were getting all the truth from Victor. So we decided to immediately wire him up and use a body recorder and send him up against some of the individuals.
Special Agent Jim Bird helps prep Victor for the wired meetings.
His mission was to engage in conversation people that we thought were involved in this. Maybe they would talk about future plans or talk about past crimes that they'd already committed. That's what we were hoping to get.
It's a dangerous assignment. If the corrupt cops suspect a double cross, they'll kill Victor.
He was going against other police officers, and he had to be careful. But because Victor was a police officer himself, he knew how far to go, how far to push, how provocative to be, and how to cover himself.
Victor starts with officers he already knows.
One of Victor's contacts was Julio Cesar, who had been the head of special arrest team for the police of Puerto Rico. Victor became close to him, hung out with him all the time, drank with him, socialized with him.
As Victor records Julio admitting to criminal acts, agents get probable cause to move to the next level of electronic surveillance.
We got enough evidence from conversations between Victor and Julio to wire up his car and get a wiretap on Julio's phone.
With the wiretap warrant, agents can listen to and record any conversation in which Julio discusses crimes. It's not easy, as the rogue cops protect themselves even on personal phone lines, according to Special Agent D. Rosario.
Many of the discussions were in code. They were not open conversations. So we had to really study a lot of people to find out, are they referring to this guy or to that guy? So there was a lot of analysis going on regarding that.
One of the detectives that Julio often talks to is Gil Valera. When Gil implicates himself, agents further expand their recording range.
We got enough probable cause to go on Gil's wire, and then from there, we identified other people they were involved with, and other things that they were doing and planning, shipping heists and shakedowns and other things.
FBI and NIE agents pair off to meticulously develop full cases on each crime discovered.
And they would run off with this particular case, which was a very significant case in itself, but it formed only a portion of the overall corruption case. So we were investigating 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 cases, if you will, at one time.
But so far, no one has admitted involvement in the killing of Jessica Trujillo. Investigators only have one suspect, the head of the Puerto Rican Police Homicide Division. Agents are determined to find the killer and solve the murder, which started the broad corruption case.
Her murder, the investigation of her murder, opened up just a Pandora's box of individuals involved in not just murder for hire, extortion, kidnapping, fraud, bribery. It just ran the gamut of basically all the felonies that you can think of.
As Victor gets in deeper with the corrupt cops, they let him in on upcoming crimes. In February 1981, they discuss a murder for hire.
During a particular meeting, Julio brings up for the consideration of the group that he had been offered a contract to kill a journalist in the southern region of Puerto Rico.
Julio suggests that Victor be the triggerman, perhaps to test his allegiance to the group. Agents can't let a murder happen, but they don't want to jeopardize the case by arresting anyone too early.
It was finally decided that the best course of action was to contact the journalist directly, tell him that there was a threat on his life, that we were working on it, but that we needed him to be out of Puerto Rico and out of harm's way.
The journalist disappears for a month,
which gave us enough time to then, through Victor, convince Julio and the rest of the group that killing a journalist was not a good idea. In fact, it was a stupid idea. And the amount of heat that it would bring down upon them and others would be untenable for them. And they really should rethink this contract thing. And that's exactly what happened.
Convinced that killing the journalist would bring too much publicity, Julio calls off the hit. Every word is recorded, helping to build the case.
We had microphones inside Victor's car. So whenever anyone was in his vehicle, we also would record their conversations inside his vehicle.
Despite months of investigation, agents are far from their ultimate goal, to arrest and convict every corrupt officer.
Victor just didn't have access to all of the people that we needed to get information out of. There were still huge holes. We were just barely beginning. And for those of us who were involved, we knew this. We knew this was going to be a long, long-term deal. And we had no illusions that it was going to be quickly resolved.
One of the players Victor is not close to is Detective Alejo Del Monte, head of the CIC. Agents believe he is the most powerful man in the organization and the most untouchable.
He was an extremely intelligent man. And as far as being an investigator, was perhaps one of the best, if not the best, homicide investigator that they ever had in that police department. That was who he was.
Still, agents vow to dismantle the death squad, from the foot soldiers all the way to the top. In Puerto Rico, the 1980 murder of Jessica Trujillo prompts an FBI investigation into a ring of crooked cops. As agents learn of alleged crimes, case agent Angelo Class holds off on making individual arrests.
There were so many people involved that it would have been good for that particular case, but it would have been detrimental to the overall objective, which was to identify as many people as we could that were involved in corruption in Puerto Rico.
Special Agent Jim Bird.
The other thing was, we still didn't have enough to make an arrest in the Jessica murder, or in any of the other murders or other suspicious activity that we thought could be tied back into police corruption. We just weren't there yet.
Detective Victor Sousa is turned informant against the death squad. In April 1981, he learns the group intends to rob the Puerto Rico Power Authority. As a diversion, they plan to detonate a bomb at the back of the complex, then storm the front office. The hit is scheduled for when the most cash is on hand, according to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
They somehow had the insight that at that time there was going to be a lot of money there and wanted to go over there before the armored cars come to pick up the money.
Fearing that somebody was going to go in with guns blazing and take over this place, we had to intervene.
But agents can't reveal their investigation. They have to use stealth for fear of tipping off the cops. They need to come up with a ruse. On the day the strike is to take place, Victor covertly contacts the FBI and tells them it's going down. Agents call the Power Authority and tell them about the bomb threat. As the death squad moves out, so do dozens of regular officers to search for a bomb.
When they got there, the place was crawling with cops, so they didn't pull it off. And so we'd won one victory on that one crime for at least we bought one day.
After more than a year, agents have good cases on several members of the death squad. But they still have nothing on Alejo Del Monte, the gang's alleged leader. Then, Victor announces a big break.
We were informed that Julio Seis had invited Victor to travel down to Caguas, a nearby town, and meet with Alejo, which was a big breakthrough for us. We wanted Victor to try to get a recording of Alejo. Hopefully they'd be talking about some kind of corrupt activity.
From what I see here,
Victor wants to record the meeting, but agents worry Alejo will find any wire.
Victor had gotten so comfortable with wearing that body recorder that he actually fought us on it. He argued. He wanted to wear the body recorder. And we won out. Basically, we just said, no, you're not going to wear this body recorder.
In December 1981, Victor and Julio travel to Alejo's home. Though Victor cannot record the meeting, agents need him to witness Alejo discussing criminal acts. As predicted, Alejo is cautious of a wire and discreetly pats down Victor.
What Alejo was trying to do was to find out a body recorder.
Thankfully, this night, there is none.
If he had been wearing the body recorder, he would have been found out that same night.
Alejo takes Julio inside to talk in private. Victor and his handlers fear he's been made as an informant. The fear is verified on the way home.
Went in their car back to San Juan. He mentioned, you know what Alejo told me? That you may be working with the federal government. And that was the first time that we heard that Victor had probably been made.
Victor tries his best to convince Julio he can be trusted. But soon agents learn it didn't work.
It was around Christmas of 1981, and we had a wiretap ongoing. In one of the conversations we overheard, we learned that plans were well developed to have Victor murdered because they knew that he was cooperating with us.
Investigators call Victor in to tell him it's over.
And I remember Victor didn't want to come out. He wanted to keep on getting evidence against all these cops.
We played that tape for him, and he dropped his head and realized that it was all over, that he and his family were going to have to leave.
Agents whisk Victor and his family out of Puerto Rico and into the witness protection program before the death squad can get to him. When Victor stops answering his phone, the rogue cops will surely know some sort of investigation is going on. They'll be less likely to talk and tougher to crack. Still, the investigation continues.
We had, by this time, developed some additional sources within the police department who maybe were not as prolific in terms of the information that they could provide like Victor could, but certainly they provided enough information that led us to actually conduct further investigations.
Agents need real evidence against the most dangerous corrupt officer, Alejo Del Monte.
We had this information about Alejo, not only by Victor, by some other cops, that he was the coordinators of these crimes, especially committing murder against jewelers and contract to kill people. So Alejo was our target.
So far, they have nothing solid against the leader Alejo, but they are about to get it. September 1st, 1982, 2 years into the investigation. Mario Ramirez is driving home after work from his father's jewelry store. He has no idea his world is about to come crashing down. In September 1982, a group of armed men abduct Mario Ramirez in San Juan, Puerto Rico. That night, Mario's father receives a call. The man on the line says they've kidnapped Mario for a $500,000 ransom. He says he'll call again with instructions, and they'll kill Mario if anyone calls the police. For hours, the family struggles with what to do. Then Mario's father calls his neighbor, FBI Special Agent Angelo Class.
It just so happens that the victim and his father lived across the street from me and were personal friends of mine.
Class comes over right away, sneaking in a back door. Hearing what happened, Class calls for additional agents and tells them to park on side streets and slip in unnoticed.
We had to be careful because I suspected that the bad guys would be watching Mario's house.
As the team gathers, they discuss the case. Earlier, a confidential source reported Alejo Del Monte planned to kidnap a jeweler's son. Special Agent Jim Bird teaches the family to extend future calls long enough for a trace and to elicit details of where Mario might be.
We try to coach them before the call comes in. Okay, next time he calls, what are you going to say? What are we going to do? What's the plan?
What they don't tell the family is that if the death squad is responsible, Mario may never come home.
We thought from the very beginning that based on what we knew about the people involved, that Mario most likely was going to be killed, whether they got the money or not. The chances that he would survive this ordeal were not great.
Over several days, calls come in recorded by the FBI. Stalling for time, Mario's father says he can't come up with all the money. The caller lowers the ransom to $224,000 in cash and jewelry. Mario's father tries to keep the man on the line, but the kidnapper knows exactly when to end each call. With traces impossible, agents search for other ways to find the kidnappers.
We want to look for any kind of clue. Is there traffic in the background? Are there night noises of the Puerto Rican mountains in the background? We want to find out as much as we can about the situation by listening to these tapes over and over again.
As they listen in, they come to a remarkable conclusion.
The people that were reviewing the phone calls after we received them, that knew Alejo personally, said, "That's Alejo's voice." They thought that was him on the phone.
Agents set up covert surveillance of Alejo and the other corrupt cops.
Alejo, being a lieutenant colonel in the police department, he would know that he was being surveilled, so we had to do it very quietly.
On the fourth night, a final call comes in. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario is listening in.
An individual with a unique voice was on the line. He was very specific as to where he wanted the family to drop the money off. He described a bridge off the Caguas Expressway.
The caller says the money and jewelry should be placed in a pillowcase and dropped into the grass by the bridge. The drop must be made in 1 hour. No cops, no FBI.
We began a trace. That was unsuccessful at that point because the call was too short. This individual was pretty sharp. He seemed to know exactly what he wanted to say and how long he wanted to take to say what he needed to say.
Agents know the death squad has killed other kidnapped victims. But Mario's family prays that this time the ransom will be enough to save an innocent young man. The FBI and Puerto Rico's NIE believe a gang of rogue cops known as the Death Squad have kidnapped Mario Ramirez. On September 4th, 1982, agents surveil the ransom drop site, a bridge outside San Juan. According to NIE Special Agent Manuel Aponte.
We had a couple agents nearby that place, and they sneaked down to that road, far away, and just stayed over there in the bushes.
Mario's father heads to the site with the ransom, protected by an armed agent hiding in his car. FBI Special Agent Fernando Candelario helps coordinate the rescue attempt.
We had an aircraft in the air to assist. You'd be surprised how quiet the plane could be. This was at night. We could fly with lights out, so the kidnapper's not even going to see the plane in the sky.
Dozens of agents conduct ground surveillance, trying to remain invisible. With everyone in place, Mario's father makes the drop by the bridge as instructed. Agents now wait for the pickup. Soon the pilot spots a vehicle approaching.
The plane observes the vehicle park near the bridge. An individual exits the vehicle. The individual apparently found what he needed to find, the package containing the money. Returned to his vehicle and drove away.
Special Agent Jim Bird.
At that point, the car is driving down the highway. We have a plane, we have ground units trying to follow this individual who has the $224,000. We still don't know where the victim is.
Special Agent Angelo Class has run the police corruption case for 2 years.
We didn't know who the subjects or the people were inside the car. So we asked one of our agents to drive by it and take a quick look. So he drives by and he says, you're not going to believe this, he says on the radio. It's Alejo himself.
As investigators watch from a distance, the leader, Alejo, switches to another car. The plane follows the original car. Ground agents trail Alejo. No one knows which car holds the ransom, but that's the least of their worries.
The primary goal is to rescue the victim, even if we have to lose the ransom. When the vehicle starts moving, we don't want everybody behind the subject. You don't want to get so close that you're going to burn the surveillance that may cause them to kill the victim.
As Alejo pulls into his own neighborhood, agents decide not to let him get to a phone.
We thought if we arrested Alejo, that the others wouldn't have a motive to kill Mario anymore because it would be Alejo to give the order to kill him.
At the suspect's house, the agents move in.
FBI, let me see your hands!
Special Agent D. Rosario calls in a warning.
Put your hands up!
I got on the radio and I said, be careful. He always carries an Uzi.
Ignoring agents' instructions, Alejo makes a move like he's going for a gun. An NIE agent fires a warning shot.
But it went so close to his face that it actually popped his eardrum, and his ear started bleeding.
Agents find no ransom in the car and no sign of Mario. A search of Alejo's house turns up no other evidence. Then, the surveillance plane loses contact with the other car. It seems a total loss.
Well, we have a colonel from the police of Puerto Rico being arrested for kidnapping charges. We don't have a victim, and we don't have a ransom.
Figure 4, any sign?
Mario is still out there, somewhere. Agents try to get Alejo to crack and tell them where the victim is held.
None of that happened. It was simply, you got the wrong guy. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a lieutenant colonel of the police of Puerto Rico. You've made a big mistake.
Agents scramble to find any of the other suspects.
We went up and down streets in Caguas and the suburbs looking for the cars we had identified with these criminals.
Hours pass. Hope begins to fade. And then...
Mario was left on the side of the road near San Juan. Called his house from a public telephone booth and said, "I've been released." And we picked him up and brought him back in.
It seems that once Alejo was arrested, the other kidnappers got nervous and released Mario. Finally, he is home.
I had never seen grown FBI agents cry. That's how emotional it got. And at that point, no one really cared whether we had recovered that ransom or not. It was important that we got him back.
With Alejo in custody, it's time to take everyone else down. A federal judge returns indictments on 32 people, mostly corrupt officers. Agents quickly take them into custody. Homicide Chief Emeterio Benitez cooperates and finally tells investigators the details of Jessica Trujillo's murder, the crime that started it all. The drug lord she was to testify against paid $20,000 for the hit. According to Emeterio, he and Gil Varela picked her up that night and decided to kill her on the way to her grandmother's house.
As they were driving through the cane fields out there in that rural part of the island, without any warning, bam! Gunshot is fired.
Gil shot her from the back seat.
And a moment later, bam! Another gunshot goes off. They stopped, took her out, threw her in the sugarcane field, and drove off.
Later, Emeterio realized Jessica had playfully pinned his own police ID on her shirt. He went back and retrieved his ID, though he missed his Panama hat. Such an audacious murder, shooting a young girl wearing the chief's hat and ID in a police car, shows how untouchable the death squad thought they were.
This was done without any planning on who was going to pull the trigger, or where it was going to take place, or what were they going to do with the body. He just shot her, driving in the head of homicide's police vehicle.
The 2-year investigation is the biggest police corruption case in Puerto Rico's history. Most of the officers plead guilty, and all receive sentences ranging from 8 years to life.
It's reprehensible. What could be worse than somebody with a charge, an affirmative duty to protect citizenry, and they're out blowing their brains out for money?
Today, the police of Puerto Rico is a different institution. The rebel CIC division has been disbanded, and the citizens of Puerto Rico can once again trust the men and women sworn to protect them.